Welcome to all who remember to change their clocks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's because I have a cell phone. It does it automatically.
That's true.
Does anybody remember, we've talked about 4 different bad habits so far. Does anybody remember what they are?
Despair?
Discouragement.
Discouragement.
Yeah,
I knew it was a
discouragement.
D.
Sylvia, I bet knows.
She does.
I
She
thought
watched all ahead. Alright,
She
we'll just let
listens.
Sylvia.
Sylvia named them all. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Well, one little trick that I remembered, the first 3, B-A-D.
Oh,
like
bad.
Huh?
Oh.
That's
Yeah,
So what does that stand for?
just bad.
I can't remember what it stands for, but I got the initials, so I've done that too.
Bitterness,
Oh, yeah.
Have you
apathy,
ever done that? I got
discouragement.
initials for something and then
And
can't remember what it
judgment.
is.
Judgment.
You want to share, Jim?
No, that's fine.
Badge.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to talk about our enemies within. Some things that may not be, others may not see in us, but they're in our little evil selves anyway. And we all have them. I'm sorry to tell you. Our outward appearance can be deceiving. It's what's inside us that counts. And you know, you can hide some things from each other, but you can't hide anything from God. The scripture that he bases this on today is the 11th chapter of Luke, verses 37 through 41. Jesus has been preaching and teaching all around, and this particular chapter deals with different little groups he's spoken to. I'm going to read this whole thing actually. In the Matthew 5, in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, we have the Beatitudes, the 8 Beatitudes. Blessed are, blessed are, blessed are. In Luke 11, he lists the 6 woes. Like woe is me. So what does a woe mean?
Alas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Calamity or
Sounds
sorrow
like BAD again.
or ruinous trouble. That's the way the Webster's defines it. So listen for the 6 woes. When Jesus had finished speaking, a Pharisee invited him to eat with him. So he went in and reclined at the table. But the Pharisee, noticing that Jesus did not first wash before the meal, was surprised. Then the Lord said to him, "Now then, you Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness. You foolish people, did not the one who made the outside make the inside also? But give what is inside the dish to the poor, and everything will be clean for you. Woe to you Pharisees, because you gave God 1/10 of your mint, rue and all other kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone. Woe to you Pharisees, because you love the most important seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces. Woe to you, because you are like unmarked graves, which men walk over without knowing it." One of the experts in the law answered him, "Teacher, when you say these things, you insult us also." Remember, the lawyers and the Pharisees were the uppity-ups, and they believed in doing everything by the rules. Jesus replied, "And you experts in the law, woe to you, because you load people down with burdens they can hardly carry, and you yourselves will not lift one finger to help them. Woe to you, because you build tombs for the prophets, and it was your forefathers who killed them. So you testify that you approve of what your forefathers did. They killed the prophets, and you build their tombs. Because of this, God in his wisdom said, I will send them prophets and apostles, some of whom they will kill and others they will persecute. Therefore this generation will be held responsible for the blood of all the prophets that has been shed since the beginning of the world, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar and the sanctuary. Yes, I tell you, this generation will be held responsible for it all. Woe to you experts in the law, because you have taken away the key to knowledge. You yourselves have not entered, and have hindered those who were entering. The key verse in this is verses 40 and 41. You foolish people, did not the one who made the outside make the inside also? But give what is inside to the dish, to the poor, and everything will be clean for you. He's talking about on the outside, they hold themselves out to be these wonderful people. Because, look, I do everything that you're supposed to do. I do the cleansing, I do the rituals, I do everything. But inside, they're evil people. Because the surface is what people see. There's a story about I can find it on my little notes here. Okay, he tells the Pharisees that it's not consistent to be worried about external cleansing when inwardly you're filled with wickedness. It's not enough to go through the motions. You have to really live what you're preaching. Now, a few years ago, at a Barber Supply Association, they had a convention in Chicago. And as a publicity stunt, they went out to Skid Row and got this little guy in the gutter that was filthy and dirty and just drunk as a skunk. So they brought him back to the convention center. They cleaned him up, shampooed his hair, shaved him, put a cologne on him, washed him with a new kind of soap they were trying to sell. And they bought him a new suit, a tie, shirt, shoes. And they said to all the world, this is what our barber supplies can do for you. But the next day, when they went looking for him, they found him right back in Skid Row, lying in the gutter, filthy and drunk. So see, you can clean somebody up on the outside and they look pretty good, but you can't clean somebody on the inside. That's what you have to do for yourself. God works from the inside out, and that's where the real cleansing is to take place. So we're going to talk today about some of these little things inside us that maybe people don't see, but we know they're there.
It's a phrase that says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
When is that proverb? Or is that anywhere?
I think
It was one my father used a lot.
I think it's
Sorry, I
I
didn't
think if
always
I think it might.
Yeah.
Let me look it up real quick while we're turning.
The first thing we're going to talk about is envy. So what is envy?
Jolene wanting her bag.
It's coveting.
What somebody else has.
Wasn't there a commandment about coveting? Do y'all remember our study on the 10 Commandments? Remember what it said?
Thou shalt not covet.
It was the 10th one. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And Proverbs tells us a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. And James tells us about envy.
I took my medicine, I promise.
In James we're told, who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, Do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, of the devil. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Billy Graham has a really good story about envy.
Don't we miss him? Oh,
Yes. In ancient Greece, the citizens of a certain city erected a statue of a celebrated champion in the public games. But his rival was so envious that he vowed to destroy that statue. So every night he went after dark and he chiseled away at the base of it, so he could undermine its foundation and make it fall. Well, it did fall, but it fell on him and killed him. He died a victim of his own envy. Envy dethrones God. Envy destroys our spiritual health. And it takes the joy, happiness, and contentment out of living. Envy becomes a spiritual leprosy, isolating us from both God and other human beings. No wonder God ranks envy on the same level as sexual immorality, idolatry, witchcraft, and drunkenness. Y'all feel bad already?
Pretty bad.
To get rid of this devastating poison, first recognize that you have it. Then confess your sin to God and renounce it. Finally, since envy cannot be overcome in your own strength, open your heart to the transforming power of Christ. So envy can really eat at us. All of our little bad habits can eat at us, though. We always want something that somebody else has. Why is that? Why do you think it's so dangerous? Has anybody ever envied?
It's a hard one because there's up to a point where you go, I want to work for that thing, right?
Yes.
And so that's good. That sort of motivation, but then it gets to a point where it falls over into discontentment with where we are in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
And anger at God that I didn't have all the things that person had, and I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
all those things that we can't actually choose, that I didn't have their family and their money and their all that sort of stuff.
And I've seen people just about break themselves trying to keep up with somebody else.
Keeping up with the
They're
Joneses.
taking away from their household and their family to keep up with somebody else because they envy their stuff so much and wanted it all cost.
Have you ever wanted something so bad when you got it, then you decided, it's not that great?
I had a very wise friend who said that we always, unless we mentally change our thinking, we always have about 10% less than we want. And because it's a percentage, you keep working, and you get that extra 10%. Once I get to that point, then I'm going to be happy. And then we're still 10% behind. If it was just a little bit more.
Because the more you have, the more you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also an industry that all they do is create envy. Advertising.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we fall prey to it.
Oh, absolutely.
When I was in high school, my dream car was a Mustang. Well, I was driving the family's old 57 Chevrolet at the time, but which I wish I still had.
Right, that's nice.
But a Mustang, that was what I wanted more than anything in the world, because one of my acquaintances in high school had a Thunderbird, a T-Bird. Well, then again, her father owned a bunch of Burger King franchises. She was an only child. I guess she did. My father worked in a mill. But my dream car was always a Mustang. And I thought, when I get out of school and get my job, I'm going to just buy me a Mustang. Well, it took me 4 years, but I finally found I had enough money to get one. Had enough credit reference and all this kind of stuff. I was probably 21, 22, something like that. Well, I didn't just go to the lot and get one. I was going to order one to suit my fancy. So I got the cutest little blue Mustang you ever did see. Bucket seats and stick in the floor. Automatic. I never could drive steering. And I was just so happy with that little booger. It was purty.
When did you wreck it?
I didn't wreck it.
Good.
No. My uncle called it a muskrat. But anyway, we've got that. It was a 1974, and as y'all older people may remember, that was the year that they just put everything on it, that pollution and all that kind of stuff, you know. And you couldn't even start it unless you fastened your seatbelt. Well, I'd had it a little while. My sister and I decided to take it to the beach. You know, two young girls in their 20s down at the beach in this cute little car, you know. We was going to have us a good old time. Well, we got down there, and we messed around and everything, did our stuff and everything, to start humming. Wouldn't start. Wouldn't jump off. Wouldn't stop. And some guy that worked at the motel hot wired it so we could get home. But we couldn't turn it off. So when we stopped to get gas, we had to let it keep running. Well, we eventually got home. And I don't know what was wrong with it that time. But then a few weeks later, it died in the backyard. There was something electrical wrong with it. I don't know what. But for the 3 years I had that car, it was a lemon. It was the biggest disappointment of my life. So see, when you envy something, somebody for something, sometimes it just doesn't work out. You know? Anybody got any envy stories?
Well, I did the same thing with the Camaro.
There's a car thing here.
So you went to the highway patrol and they got you one.
Yeah, I went to highway patrol. They ended up getting me a Dodge. So.
That's
All
right.
looks
That's
good.
one of them big ones.
So sometimes what we want doesn't, what we're supposed to have, and it doesn't work out. It's not what you thought it would be.
I see that a lot with the little kids. You know,
Mhm.
They go, I haven't played with that toy for 6 months, but you're over here now. You're playing with it,
Yeah.
and I want to play with it now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then you get to play with it, and you know, it's not so bad.
Well, did
Sounds
you
like
ever stop and think that you may envy somebody for their lifestyle or their money or their car
Happiness.
or anything? Did you ever stop and think maybe somebody envies you for what you have? So maybe before you get carried away with envy, if you stopped and thought, well, dang, you know, I got a lot of blessings in my life. So somewhere Paul says something about being content with what you have. And we don't always do that, do it.
I think it's Philippians. I've learned the secret in when I'm hungry and when I'm full,
Yeah.
when I'm happy, when I'm sad.
Yeah.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Yeah. So envy is, like I say, it doesn't always show on the outside, but it's in you, eating away at you. The next evil we're going to talk about is blame shifting. Kind of a weird term. I would have thought it was just blaming other people, but you know. It's a temptation to rationalize, to explain away, and to point the finger at somebody else to get the attention off of us. So, what does the Bible say about blame shifting? Well, that's one of the first sins that was committed in the Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
The first sin was what?
Picking the apple.
Disobedience. They disobeyed God's warning to not eat this apple or whatever this fruit was. We don't really know if it was an apple. So then they get scared. And they run and hide and take their little fig leaves and everything and cover themselves and all this stuff. Thinking, oh, you know, we can hide from God. Well, hello, they can't. So then we start the blame game. Well, first of all, they say, when God comes and tells them, hey, you ate that fruit and I told you not to. So the man, being the gentleman he is, first of all, says, that woman, she did it. She gave it to me, so I ate it. Well, the woman said, but that serpent, he told me to do it. He tricked me. Don't we still do that today? We don't want to be caught in our own lie, or we don't want to be caught in being the one that disobeyed. So we've started this whole cycle with Adam and Eve. And I'm not sure which is the worst, the disobedience or the blaming somebody else, not taking, you know, ownership for your own sin. But that's what we do today. That's why it costs so much to buy anything, because you got all these things on to protect from lawsuits. That's why your hairdryer says don't use it in the bathtub, because somebody somewhere did that and said, well, it didn't tell me not to. You know, product liability.
The coffee's hot.
Yeah.
The coffee's hot.
They want that soup.
Right. Everybody wants to blame somebody else for something. Have you ever done that?
Oh,
And kids, when they get in trouble, she did it. Well, she made me do it. Or no, he really did it.
Was there a time in this Adam Eve blame thing where, I don't know if this is really true or not, or it's just somebody said, that Adam said, well, you made her for me.
Yeah, that's part of the implication. It's that woman who you made, so it's either
his
her
fault.
fault or God's fault.
Yeah.
It's definitely not mine.
Yeah.
Right, definitely not mine.
You gave her to me.
Yeah.
So in addition,
You made her
yeah.
wrong.
Let's see if I can find that. In addition to blaming somebody, he even blamed God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, he says, the woman you put here with me, she gave me. So first he blames God for creating the woman in the first place.
If you'd just left me here by myself.
Yeah. Exactly.
I was getting a long time. I was gonna go fishing, do something else.
And that's not the only place in the Bible where
Said you need to take a little food with you.
somebody blames somebody else. Remember in Exodus when the people were leaving and things got tough and they were starving and they didn't have any water, and
Oh, yeah.
so then they turned around on Moses and said, if only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. In other words, you're the one to blame, Moses. Why didn't you just leave us alone in Egypt? Well, they all trailed after him, didn't they? They chose to follow
With
him.
tambourines.
And when he gave them food and manna, they got tired of eating the bread. And I have enough bird now that I gotta have, I gotta have something else. I'm getting tired of eating the same food.
And
And
then
then
in
what
the
is
New,
this?
the New Testament, we see Pilate. Pilate blamed someone else. When he goes before the people and asks which one they want released, and they say Barabbas, he says, what shall I do then with Jesus who is called Christ? And they all answered, crucify him. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, crucify him. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood, he said. It is your responsibility. But he could have stopped it. He could have stopped it. So we all do this. If you have a bad day at work or something, you come home and kick the dog or something. Well, we don't, but some people, that's a, you know. And it's a favorite ploy with little kids and mature adults. She told me to do it. I couldn't help it. Everybody else was doing it. That's the big one. Everybody else has done this, so it's okay, isn't it? Did you ever tell your parents that? Do they believe you? No. Do we still blame people? Remember the old phrase back in the 70s? The devil made me do it, when you were just a mere child.
Blaming on the bossa nova. That was one of the songs.
Blame. We want to blame somebody for something because we don't want to be caught as the one who is guilty, don't we? One of the first, this guy says, that wrote this book, one of the first things his son Jeff learned to say was a neat cover-up when he knew he'd done something wrong. "It's okay, Dad," he would say. "We'll tell Mom you did it." Blaming things on others or on the devil for tempting us is a cop-out. Demonic powers, witches, black magic, or superstition don't control us. God gave us freedom of choice. We can choose to do something right or we can choose to do something wrong. But it ultimately is our responsibility to choose and not to blame it on somebody else. So what are some reasons that you think people blame other people? Even for just little minor things.
I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
I don't want people to think badly of me.
Right. Right.
A lot of times they don't think they've done anything wrong.
Right?
No, that's true.
They've
That's true.
actually rationalized.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah, everybody else is done.
That's right. That's right. Our third bad habit is self-pity. Has anybody ever had a pity party? Have you ever just felt sorry for yourself? God, why is it all going wrong? Why is everything wrong in my life? Look at them. Then you get into envy. When you get in self-pity, you start envying other people, don't you? Every human being is prone to self-pity. We're born to be self-centered with a powerful drive to protect our egos and our rights. When we decide that life hasn't treated us the way we feel it should, self-pity is the result. It causes us to sulk and obsess over our hurts. Poor me. At the heart of self-pity is a disagreement with God over how life and He has treated us. Did you ever think about that? When you're full of self-pity, in essence, you're blaming God. Why did you let this happen to me? The biggest clue that self-pity is not of God is the word self. Anytime we're focused on ourselves, unless we're thinking of repenting, we're in the territory of the flesh as opposed to our spirit. When self is dominant, God is not. We in effect have become our own God. C.S. Lewis put it this way: the moment you have a self at all, there's a possibility of putting yourself first, wanting to be the center, wanting to be God, in fact. That was the sin of Satan, and that was the sin he taught the human race. In the Bible, a prime example of self-pity is found in King Ahab's wicked life. Ahab coveted a vineyard belonging to Naboth, and he wanted to buy it, but Naboth refused to sell it to him. So Ahab went home and he was mad and sullen and pouting. So he lay on his bed and refused to eat. I never have understood why people go on starvation when they're protesting something. But anyway, so imagine a king pouting in his palace. He was so full of himself that he was only made happy again when his wife, the evil Jezebel, set in motion a plan to have Naboth murdered. So self-pity is not very good. When we indulge in self-pity, we elevate our importance in our own eyes. In Romans 12:3 it says, "Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought." We are thinking too highly of ourselves when we allow life's hurts and injustices to dictate our emotional state. And once again, like we talked about with envy, we're to give thanks in everything. And it's impossible to give thanks when you're clinging to your self-pity. Because a self-indulgent attitude is not focused on gratitude to others. Self-pity cannot be thankful for what God has allowed. Now we all have pity parties. We all feel sorry for ourselves. But the best way to get over that is to count your blessings. Look around you and think, well, you know, this happened to me, but look what happened to that other person. You know, it's when you're concentrating on self, you're not thinking about others. You're not thinking about God. It's just poor little me. And you're in a funk and you need to get out of it. So are any of these, did you see yourself in any of these? You don't have to admit it, but
And also in our culture, came across a study this week that I think depression is up 40% or something like that. Because that's, our culture is all about, you know, all social media type stuff. It's all geared towards that envy and that. Look at other people and all the great stuff they have, and self-pity and all of that sort of stuff. It just drives that.
Who's keeping score?
yeah. I think all three of these sort of work on each other. The self-pity, the blaming others. Well, if it wasn't for this person, I would have more. Envy and others, they all sort of go hand in hand. So if you're going to try to lick one, you can sort of lick all of them. And you know, we're not going to be perfect. There's always going to be somebody we envy occasionally, but when you find yourself envying someone, stop right there and think, okay, God, you've blessed me in other ways. And I think most of the things we envy are material things. And everybody, it's the material things we dwell on instead of our spiritual life. Because it doesn't matter how much you have, you can't take it with you, you know.
I think we also envy kind of emotional states.
Yeah.
We'll see somebody else's, oh, well, their marriage, they have no problems whatsoever, right? They're just always happy. You know, that person is always just up. And there's a guy that I talk with at Facebook sometimes, and he is absolutely positively convinced that the struggles he goes through is because he's not married. And if he was married, then he would have no struggles. And I was like,
He would have other
no, that is absolutely incorrect. Right?
don't see, everybody's got struggles. There's different kinds of struggle, but everybody has a struggle in their life. And some people don't show it to the world. But it's there.
It's life. It's life.
It's life, that's right, it's life. And it's how you deal with it. Some people are very private, they don't air their, struggles with the world. But sometimes you can tell when somebody's bothered about something, and you can reach out to them. But I think envy and blaming others and what was this last one I just said?
Self-pity.
Yeah, self-pity. They all go hand in hand. And how do we overcome them?
I'll give you the best solution for self-pity. Time and perspective. The older I get, the easier it is for me to look back and see God's hand at work at everything that happens. In the lowest times that you have, the most difficult trials that you have to deal with, you can look back and see how He guided you through that and made something much better come from those bad times.
I think you're exactly right. And I think a lot of it is, as you get older, you look back and see that. Because I used to wonder how my mother could accept death in her family well. But because, well, she was a family that had, when I knew them, they had 6 kids, but had 2 to die. One was just a little child, like 4 years old or something, during the flu epidemic of 1918. And she remembered their little Sunday school class had to be the little people that went by the casket and everything. She thought it was just haunted her and everything. But as she grew older, and as we all grow older, we experienced death of loved ones. So it's easier to accept. But you're right, you can look back all through your life and see where God's hand was there. And He's still going to be there. And when you get down in the dumps, is what we always call it in our family, down in the dumps, and feeling sorry for yourself, He's still there. So think about what enemy within you that you would like to give up for Lent, and how it could make your life different if you gave it up permanently. You don't have to share unless you want to, but think about that in this coming week. Let us pray. Dear God, thank You for opening our eyes to the enemies around us, especially our enemies within. Help us to look inside ourselves and replace our enemies with love, hope, and faith. Show us the way to make this Lent a beginning of positive change in our lives and the lives of others. Amen. Next week we're going to talk about running away.